Lithium really is the future.
The intensifying quest to find and produce lithium.
It's a soft, silvery metal that's the key component in electric car batteries.
Most people look at the Great Lakes and see calm blue water. They never imagine what is happening under the surface.
The world's need for lithium for batteries may surge by 75-fold.
There are estimates that the lithium-ion battery market could reach more than $100 billion by 2027.
Deep below these waters, a secret mining race is underway. Huge corporations, foreign powers, and government agencies are fighting for metals hidden in ancient rock. These minerals feed the world's batteries and sit dangerously close to the drinking water of more than 40 million people.
They get to come mine here and then go home. This is our home. This is where our people are. These are ancestral homelands. We don't get to leave this place.
What terrifying truths are waiting beneath the Great Lakes that no one has revealed? What lies beneath? Most people look at the Great Lakes and see peaceful water. They see open horizons, clear waves, and quiet shorelines. What they do not see is the violent truth hidden below. Under these calm waters sits one of the most powerful and dangerous collections of minerals on Earth. It is a buried world of metal, pressure, heat, and ancient destruction. It is a world that energy companies have studied in silence because the minerals buried beneath the Great Lakes can feed the global battery supply chain for decades. This fact is rarely discussed in public settings. It is mentioned only in government reports or in mining documents that most people never read. The truth has been hiding in plain sight, and it is far darker than anyone expects. The first secret comes from the Sudbury Basin in Ontario. This is one of the oldest and most violent geological scars on the planet. Scientists believe it was formed when a massive meteor slammed into Earth nearly 2 billion years ago. The impact melted rock, reshaped the land, and forced huge amounts of nickel, copper, and cobalt into the ground. These minerals are the backbone of modern batteries. The Sudbury region still holds one of the largest nickel deposits in the world. It sits close to Lake Huron, which means the Great Lakes system is directly connected to one of the richest metal zones ever discovered. Mining companies have been extracting metal from this region for decades, and the reserves still appear to run deep. The next secret lies under the Lake Superior region. This entire area sits on top of the Mid-Continent Rift system. This is a giant tear in the Earth's crust. It is so large that satellites can detect its outlines from space. When this rift formed, it pulled molten metal and volcanic rock upward. It created thick layers of nickel, copper, cobalt, and other metals that are now trapped under and around Lake Superior. The rift stretches from Minnesota through Michigan and into Ontario. It holds some of the most valuable mineral concentrations in North America. Companies have known about these deposits for years, but only recently have they recognized how important they are for electric vehicles. Minnesota holds another disturbing piece of the puzzle. The Tamarack Project and the Duluth Complex contain an enormous store of nickel and copper. These deposits rank among the largest untapped metal reserves in the world. Reports from both government and independent geologists confirm that these deposits could become major sources of battery metals if developed at full scale. Real companies are already moving in. Talon Metals, which supplies Tesla, is drilling near the Lake Superior watershed. Vale, Glencore, and London Mining operate huge facilities across Ontario and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The Ring of Fire region, which drains into Lake Superior, contains high-grade chromite that is extremely rare. These minerals are not random discoveries. They are all required for electric vehicle batteries. This is why the United States and Canada have listed the Great Lakes region as a critical mineral zone. But knowing what lies under the Great Lakes is only the beginning. The real question is why so few people are aware of how aggressively companies are already moving in. Why the world's battery giants quietly turn to the Great Lakes. The global race to control the battery industry began with panic. For years, companies depended on the lithium triangle in Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. They depended on it because it held more than half of the world's lithium supply. But the region was never stable. It was fragile, dry, highly contested, and pushed to the edge by non-stop extraction. Water in these regions dropped to dangerous levels. Entire communities watched their freshwater disappear. As evaporation ponds drained the desert, local groups filed lawsuits. They blocked roads. They protested against mining companies that refused to slow down. In some areas, operations were stopped for months at a time. These problems created a chain reaction through the entire battery industry. Companies realized they could not trust a region that was running out of water and growing more unstable every year. The second shock came from global politics. China and Russia gained control over more than half of the world's lithium processing. This meant the United States and its allies could not fully control their own battery supply chains. This caused serious fear in government agencies and corporations. They knew that everything from electric cars to military energy storage depended on secure mineral supplies. They needed a safer option. They needed a location that was politically calm, financially stable, and rich in minerals. This is when the industry quietly turned its attention to North America's freshwater core. The Great Lakes region suddenly became a silent target. Companies noticed something that most people never think about. The Great Lakes region does not only hold fresh water, it sits on top of one of the strongest battery metal zones in North America. Nickel, copper, cobalt, graphite, and even possible lithium brines exist across this region. These minerals are the building blocks of every modern battery. They are used in electric vehicles, energy storage stations, phones, laptops, and military devices. Companies saw the potential. They saw a chance to escape the chaos overseas and replace it with something far more secure. Water was another major reason the region became attractive. Battery metals require large amounts of water for processing. The Great Lakes hold 21% of the world's fresh surface water. This resource is priceless for mining and refining. Corporations understood that having abundant water nearby would reduce costs, protect operations, and avoid the disasters happening in South America. They also noticed that the region sits directly next to the industrial heart of the United States. Detroit, Chicago, Toronto, and the entire Midwest form the largest manufacturing corridor in North America. Companies would not need to ship minerals across oceans. Everything they needed was close. There is real evidence showing how quickly this shift happened. In 2022, the United States introduced the Inflation Reduction Act. It promised billions to companies that produced battery minerals on U.S. soil. Canada reacted by labeling 31 minerals as critical. The new policy pushed exploration companies to move into the Great Lakes region. Between 2019 and 2023, several mining firms quietly bought exploration rights in Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Many purchases were not publicly discussed. Analysts believe some companies may have kept their discoveries quiet because open discussion would trigger public resistance. As global pressure pushed the battery industry toward North America, a new problem emerged. The enormous environmental cost of extracting metals beneath the largest freshwater system on Earth demanded attention, and the consequences were far more severe than anyone expected. The environmental time bomb. The Great Lakes look calm on the surface, but beneath that calm sits a growing threat that most people never see. Mining companies are digging, blasting, drilling, and pumping in areas that feed directly into the largest freshwater system on Earth. This region provides drinking water for more than 40 million people. It protects towns, farms, industries, and wildlife across 2 countries. Yet companies are operating in zones where one mistake could poison water that cannot be replaced. The danger is not distant, it is immediate and real. Scientists have warned for years that the geology beneath the Great Lakes is fragile because the rock layers are porous. Water moves through them like slow currents through a sponge. Any contamination can travel far beyond the mine that caused it. Once pollution enters these groundwater channels, it becomes extremely difficult to remove. A 2020 report from the United States Geological Survey raised alarms about the risk of contamination. The report pointed out that mines near Lake Superior and Lake Huron sit on permeable rock formations that link directly to aquifers. Aquifers are large underground water bodies that supply homes and towns. When mining waste touches these aquifers, toxins can spread without warning. This is not speculation. This danger has already been documented in other regions. Sulfide mining is especially threatening because sulfide ores react violently with air and water. When exposed, they create sulfuric acid. This acid dissolves heavy metals such as arsenic, lead, and mercury. These metals then seep into surrounding waterways. Entire river systems have been destroyed by this process. In Montana, streams once used for fishing and farming were turned into dead zones. In British Columbia, toxic runoff wiped out wildlife and damaged ecosystems that still have not recovered. Scientists say the Great Lakes face the same risk because the same type of ore is being mined here. If sulfide exposure reaches the lakes, the acid could move through sediments and slowly leak into deeper waters. This damage would not be easy to stop. Cleanup can take decades and billions of dollars, and even then, many ecosystems never fully return to normal. Real incidents have already occurred in the region. Michigan's Eagle Mine received several groundwater contamination warnings from state regulators. These warnings were issued after tests showed elevated levels of substances near the site. In Ontario, public filings between 2015 and 2021 confirmed that mines discharged heavy metals into rivers that feed into Lake Superior. Even small leaks can accumulate over time. As contamination enters tributaries, it spreads into the larger lake system. The lakes move slowly, and once a toxin enters these waters, it stays for years. There is also concern about water usage. Lithium extraction in Chile consumes more than 400,000 gallons of water per ton. While the Great Lakes region does not mine lithium at this scale, nickel and copper processing still require millions of gallons every day. This puts heavy pressure on groundwater sources. If water levels drop, wells dry up, wetlands shrink, and fish habitats collapse. Some hydrologists believe large-scale mining could change groundwater flow paths under the lakes. This remains speculative, but the concern is logical. Removing large volumes of ore alters underground pressure, which can redirect how water moves. If flow paths shift, polluted water could travel to new areas and spread faster than expected. Environmental dangers are only one part of the hidden mining operation. The financial network behind these projects is even more secretive, and its influence reaches far deeper than most people imagine. The financial machine behind the operation. The mining operations surrounding the Great Lakes did not grow by accident. They grew because enormous amounts of money began pouring into the region. The financial pressure behind these projects is powerful and relentless. It moves through corporations, governments, and foreign investors who all see the Great Lakes as a rare chance to control the future of global batteries. This financial machine works quietly, often out of public view, and it is driven by the belief that whoever controls battery metals controls the next century of transportation, energy, and national defense. Battery makers in the United States have become desperate for secure supplies of nickel, cobalt, and graphite. These materials are essential for every modern battery used in electric cars, power grids, and consumer electronics. Companies like Tesla, General Motors, Ford, and Panasonic cannot meet their production goals unless they secure long-term access to these minerals. This need has created a direct connection between the Great Lakes mines and some of the largest corporations in the world. General Motors invested $650 million into Talon Metals, a company drilling near the Lake Superior watershed. This was not a small side investment. It was a strategic move to lock in nickel for electric vehicle production and avoid supply disruptions from unstable overseas suppliers. Foreign companies are also deeply involved. Glencore, one of the most powerful mining companies in Switzerland, controls major mines that feed smelting and refining facilities connected to the Great Lakes region. Glencore's influence reaches across several continents, and its role in North America continues to grow. Vale, a Brazilian mining giant, expanded its operations across Ontario. These operations move nickel and copper into global supply chains that support battery production in Europe, Asia, and the United States. These companies have enough financial weight to shape local economies, steer regulations, and secure long periods of mining rights. Governments are heavily involved because they see the Great Lakes minerals as part of national security. The United States activated the Defense Production Act to support domestic mining of nickel and graphite. This means federal money can now be used to help private mining companies open new sites and increase extraction. Canada created tax credits that reward companies exploring for minerals in Great Lakes provinces. These financial incentives reduce risks for corporations and encourage rapid expansion. When governments support mining in this way, local communities have little power to question or resist the projects. There is also a layer of secrecy surrounding these operations. Many mining companies release only the minimum information required by law. Their public filings reveal almost nothing about water consumption, chemical use, tailing storage, or the long-term risks of drilling near the lakes. Some mines use confidentiality agreements with contractors and local officials. These agreements hide operational details under the excuse of protecting sensitive information. Communities often learn about drilling or expansion only after the work has begun. There are also troubling financial behaviors identified by analysts. Some companies may underreport ore volumes to secure land at a lower cost, or to delay public attention until operations are fully established. This claim is speculative, but the pattern matches behavior seen in other mining regions where companies tried to avoid protests or legal challenges. The financial machine behind Great Lakes mining shows who truly benefits from extraction, but the money is only part of the story. The physical cost of pulling these minerals from beneath a fragile freshwater ecosystem reveals consequences that are far more disturbing. The hidden dangers of mining beneath a wet and unstable lakebed world. Mining under the Great Lakes is not like mining in a desert or a dry mountain range. The ground here is soaked with water. The rock holds moisture like a sponge. Tunnels run beneath wetlands, river channels, and unstable lake beds that have shifted for thousands of years. Every step beneath this region is dangerous because the ground can change in a single moment. Workers feel the pressure of water above them every day. They know that a mistake can turn an ordinary work shift into a terrifying disaster. These dangers are rarely discussed outside technical documents, but they define the daily reality of mining in the Great Lakes region. One of the most frightening threats is flooding. Mines in this region constantly fight water. Groundwater pushes through cracks in the rock. It seeps into tunnels and can rise faster than pumps can remove it. In older mining zones across Michigan and Ontario, sudden inflows have collapsed entire sections without warning. Some accidents were so fast that workers had only a few seconds to escape. When water forces its way into a mine, it carries rock, sand, and mud. This mixture has enough force to destroy equipment and bury workers alive. Modern sensors help, but no system can fully predict the ways water moves through fractured geological layers. Another danger comes from tailings dams. Tailings are the toxic leftovers from processing metal ore. These wastes are stored in huge ponds held back by man-made walls. These walls are often built over soft, unstable soil. If a dam breaks, the sludge can flow into rivers that feed the Great Lakes within days. This is not a distant fear. Canada witnessed a major tailings failure in 2015 at Mount Polley. Millions of cubic meters of contaminated water and mud rushed through forests and waterways. The same type of engineering is used around the Great Lakes. People rarely talk about it because the potential damage would be too shocking. A breach near a Great Lakes tributary could carry heavy metals into a water system used by more than 30 million people. Worker safety inside these mines is a constant struggle. Many nickel deposits create ore dust that releases sulfur dioxide during processing. Long-term exposure can damage lungs and cause breathing problems. Ventilation is supposed to reduce this risk. However, moisture in the air makes ventilation harder to control. Wet air can trap fumes. It can thicken the dust. This creates pockets of toxic air that can linger in tunnels and processing rooms. Miners in these environments work with masks, monitors, and emergency stations, yet accidents continue to happen because the conditions change quickly. The geological foundation beneath the Great Lakes is another threat. The region includes fractured rock left behind by ancient forces. These cracks can shift when heavy drilling removes pressure from one part of the rock wall. Some geologists worry that long-term extraction under lake beds might slowly change underground pressure zones. If this happens, it could weaken shoreline stability over decades. This idea is not proven, but is based on real geological behavior seen in other wet mining zones around the world. These physical dangers feed directly into a much larger battle. The fight for the global battery supply chain is becoming a geopolitical war, and the Great Lakes region is quietly becoming one of its most valuable and contested fronts. The battery war. The fight for control of the world's battery minerals is not happening on open battlefields. It is happening in quiet boardrooms, locked laboratories, and government offices. The Great Lakes region sits in the middle of this struggle. Every major superpower knows that whoever controls the metals beneath this area will control a huge part of the electric future. This has created a silent conflict that most people living around the lakes never hear about. The region has become a target for rapid investment, political pressure, and covert strategic moves. The world's largest economies are fighting for the metal buried under towns, forests, and rivers. China remains the strongest player in the global battery supply chain. It processes between 60 and 70% of the world's lithium, nickel, and graphite. This gives China enormous power over every country that wants to build electric vehicles, phones, or military technology. China does not need to own every mine. It controls the factories that turn raw minerals into usable battery materials. This means that even when minerals come from Australia, South America, or Africa, China often still controls the final step. The United States sees this as a national security threat because it cannot produce enough refined minerals inside its own borders. The United States wants to break this dependency and sees the Great Lakes as the best way to do it. The region contains the largest cluster of battery minerals on the continent. The United States does not have many other options. Other areas are too small, too remote, or too slow to develop. The Great Lakes region is close to highways, power grids, factories, and rail lines. This makes the area perfect for fast development. As a result, American agencies are pouring money into mining projects in Minnesota, Michigan, and northern Ontario. The United States and Canada are now working together as if the region were a shared resource. In the 2021, both countries signed a critical minerals agreement. The document clearly identified nickel, cobalt, and graphite as essential for national security. Canadian mines located near Lake Superior are being approved faster than usual. Their output is intended to feed American battery factories in the Midwest. Both governments understand that the region's minerals cannot fall under foreign control. Russian interests complicate the race. Before sanctions, Russian companies invested in nickel operations connected to Canadian smelters. These links created supply chains that quietly fed North American manufacturing. Sanctions cut off these pathways. This forced the United States and Canada to replace them quickly. The shift added pressure to open or expand Great Lakes mining zones. There are also concerns that foreign investors might be using Canadian subsidiaries to gain influence over future Great Lakes mineral production. Analysts describe this as a subtle strategy. These companies do not need to control the mines directly. They only need to control financing, processing contracts, or shipping agreements. These moves are difficult to detect because they pass through layers of corporate ownership. The world is shifting toward electric power, and this region is being pulled into the center of that shift. All of this leads to the ultimate question: what happens if these operations succeed or fail, and what does the future look like for the Great Lakes? The final reckoning. Every mine being drilled, every tunnel being carved, and every tailings pond being expanded pushes the region toward one of two futures. One future brings power, money, and independence. The other brings ruin and contamination that cannot be undone. The stakes are enormous because the Great Lakes are not just lakes. They are the drinking water source for more than 40 million people. If the hidden mining operation succeeds, the Great Lakes become the engine of the world's battery supply. If it collapses, the damage could last for centuries. If the operations succeed, North America gains something it has never had before. It gains full battery independence. The metals under the Great Lakes could supply millions of electric vehicles every year. Nickel, cobalt, and graphite from mines across Michigan, Minnesota, and northern Ontario would flow into battery factories in the Midwest. These factories would supply car companies across the continent. Entire towns that have been shrinking for decades could return to life. Money would move into these communities, schools would reopen, rail lines would expand. The region would become a powerhouse for the global energy transition. Governments would celebrate this achievement because it would weaken foreign control over critical minerals. But this success has a dark side. The environmental cost could be irreversible. Great Lakes mining creates sulfide waste that can produce acid mine drainage. Even a small leak into a stream that flows into Lake Superior or Lake Huron could set off a chain reaction that never stops. Once sulfide contamination begins, it does not simply disappear. Scientists explain that it can last for hundreds of years because the chemical reaction continues as long as the waste stays exposed to air and water. The contamination moves slowly. It spreads through small channels underground. It poisons insects, fish, and plants before anyone notices. By the time the damage appears in the open, the reaction is already deep underground. If the operation collapses instead of succeeding, the outcome is equally frightening. Abandoned mines contain toxic tailings that cannot be left alone. They have to be monitored and treated forever. Groundwater aquifers that were drilled through could collapse. This collapse can create sinkholes or sudden reversals in underground water flow. Once this happens, water does not return to its original path. The region could face an economic disaster similar to Bolivia's train graveyard, where a once promising mining boom collapsed and left entire communities stranded in poverty. Long-term scientific warnings add another layer of fear. Freshwater contamination on this scale can move slowly through underground rock for decades. It can travel miles before anyone detects it. Cleanup becomes nearly impossible once the contamination spreads. Some environmental economists warn that climate-driven drought could make the Great Lakes more vulnerable to industrial stress within the next 50 to 100 years. They believe this could raise the risk of water level drops, stronger pollution concentration, and more pressure on aquifers already weakened by mining. And so, beneath the beautiful surface of the Great Lakes, a hidden operation unfolds. It could redefine the world's battery supply chain or trigger an environmental catastrophe that future generations cannot escape. What do you think about this operation? Comment down below.